Y'all ever wonder what happens to a Lich after they get their bones blowed up? I mean, seriously. The team of heroes rolls on in, they smoke the Lich by jamming a Holy Avenger through his chest, smash that piece of Tupperware he keeps all those souls in, and the day is saved. But Homeboy's bones are usually just left to rot in whatever dank dungeon our Lich pal was slain in, right? I mean, meticulous adventurers with knowledge of the dark and arcane secrets of necromancy, aka nerds, might go out of their way to see the Lich's corpse utterly destroyed. But sometimes, the skull of that Lich just lays on the floor. Days, weeks, maybe even years can go by without anything disturbing them or causing trouble, but it's only a matter of time before a tiny vermin like, oh, I don't know, say a spider makes themselves a little home inside of the former Dreadlord's skull. And when that happens, their tiny little spider brain is simply bombarded with the lingering energies of the Lich. Its final moments, dreams and aspirations of total dominance, a malevolent goal of sublime, all-encompassing magical perfection through undeath. And most importantly, a ton of necrotic energy. In some cases, this barrage of latent psychic and necrotic power might kill the unassuming creature. I mean, you gotta imagine the skull was already filled with a handful of dead spiders, so it's kind of on the spider for trying to make this his new house, but I digress. Should the creature survive the initial wave of evil that washes over it, this little spider may find itself transformed into something truly terrible. A Gray Shiver. Sometimes while delving through the annals of obscure and little-known monster entries from D&D's history, I come across a creature that is so truly fantastic, based on vibes alone, I know it's gonna end up on the show. And the Gray Shiver is one of those monsters. While reading through Dragon Magazine issue 343, I saw this piece of artwork, which appeared to be a tarantula wearing a skull like a business suit. And let's just say I was intrigued. Come to find out that this is the skull of a former Lich, and this spider is about to become my game's next arch-villain. So the idea here is simple. A spider makes the Lich's skull its home, the latent magic from the Lich leaks out of the skull and into the spider. The spider then becomes both sentient and infused with evil magic. Amazing. Mwah. But what does that even really look like? I mean, we can all see the art. It looks like a menacing spider with a badass hat that used to be a guy. But what I mean by this is, how does that work as a monster? Well, allow me to explain. Once our little spider pal here has become infused with the dark desire of the former Lich, whose skull it has adopted as a mobile home, its intelligence goes from a 1 to a 15. 15 is not particularly insane statistics-wise, but if 10 is your average, it still makes this arachnid just as smart, or likely even smarter, than the smartest person you know. But that's not all. All of its mental stats get a nice bump, especially its charisma, which skyrockets up to a 21. The spider learns from the memories of the Lich, gaining proficiency in Arcana and acquiring elements of the Lich's personality. The spider relishes in its newfound necromantic powers and immediately starts abusing them to dominate other creatures. Both in a I'll kill you if you don't do what I say kind of way, and in a I am literally mind controlling you kind of way. See, the poison bite of the spider not only does poison damage, but also now dominates the one bitten by it. So by using its literal domination effects and the slew of powerful spells it finds itself able to cast all of a sudden, this tiny tyrant quickly becomes a total menace. Gray Shivers are far from master manipulators, however. They certainly think quite highly of themselves, but this hubris often causes them to overreach and get embroiled in schemes involving much more powerful creatures, potentially even attracting the attention of the heroes who killed the Lich in the first place. And while they are pretty damn powerful, a true Lich they most certainly are not. But I feel like you're kind of getting the general concept here. So let's talk about the actual mechanics of this thing, what it can do, how it manages to be a CR9 creature, and what we can do with that. right after a word from today's sponsor, Dream Realm Storytellers, and their latest project, Svilland Lost Lands of Orfhal. The Svilland books are by far the most robust and well thought out D&D setting if you're after something inspired by Norse mythology, and their latest setting book, Lost Lands of Orfhal, expands on that to include a massive new locale to undertake harrowing Viking adventures within. Lost Lands of Orfhal includes in-depth lore about the region's inhabitants and history, as well as a bestiary of over 50 brand new monsters inspired by Norse myth. There are also 2 brand new classes in the Hamrammer, a primal warrior, and the Herald, a fate-bound mystic. Along with a whole new region, we've also got At the Heart of Frost, an entire adventure for level 3 to 12 characters that has a really interesting twist, you know, aside from the dope Viking of it all. The campaign is a complete story from the perspective of 2 rival warbands, meaning that you can run the adventure with the players on one side, then run the same adventure again with the players on the other side, or even jump back and forth. Or you could even run 2 different groups simultaneously through each side of the campaign. Just make sure if you do that, you've got a table big enough to facilitate everyone around it for the big final confrontation. If you're new to Svilland, the Kickstarter has a bunch of different pledge options that include all of the original Svilland content and the previous setting expansions, which is a ton of stuff, all designed with a laser focus to give you a fleshed out and wonderfully coherent Norse mythological setting for D&D. If any of that sounds cool to you, which it should, I highly recommend following the link in the description down below, checking out the Kickstarter, and taking a look for yourself. Between 3 setting books, 3 adventures, a lore book, a novel, an OST, tons of maps, monsters, spells, classes, subclasses, and backgrounds, you're bound to find something that you love. So thank you to Dream Realm Storytellers and the world of Svilland for bringing us here this week to talk about something I love, cool D&D monsters. Specifically though, this weird little spider who lives in a Lich's skull. Speaking of, let's get back to our 8-legged friend. Gray Shivers have a pretty extensive stat block considering their humble origins. Clocking in at a CR of 9, these monstrosities are barely recognizable when compared to the simple arachnids they once were. As tiny creatures, they are of course cursed with a low movement speed and pretty shallow pool of hit points compared to other creatures at the same level, but they've got plenty of tools to aid their survival. For one, the skull they live in provides them with 3/4 cover as long as they're inside of it, meaning that their AC goes from a 15 to a 20, and they've got a +5 on all their dexterity saving throws. The skull also prevents anything from sensing their emotions or alignment, reading their thoughts, sensing its location, or magically observing it. That combined with a stealth bonus of +12, and they're incredibly difficult to find when they wish to remain hidden. They also have the same traits as a base spider, allowing them to crawl on the ceiling and on webs, as well as magic resistance to help them shake off any pesky spell effects. Their primary action is called Poisoned Bite, and it's quite wordy, though it is basically just the rules around how their domination effect works with regards to their poison. Essentially, if the spider bites you, you have to save against being poisoned, and if you are poisoned, you are also dominated a la the Dominate monster spell for 1 minute. At the end of that minute, you get another save, and if you fail that, you're dominated for a week. This does mean that spells and abilities which remove the poison condition are able to counteract this domination effect, which is great because having one of your party members get dominated by a spider-lich wannabe is terrifying. But that's not the only trick up their many sleeves. They've also inherited a litany of spells from the Lich's energy that they can cast with reckless abandon. At will, they have Detect Magic, Mage Hand, Message, Prestidigitation, Magic Missile, Ray of Enfeeblement, Sleep, and True Strike, all of which are part of pretty much any standard kit for a spellcaster. Twice per day, they've got a Fireball, Major Image, and Scorching Ray, which again, classic. And once per day, they get Greater Invisibility and Polymorph. Polymorph is especially fun here because that allows this little spider to turn into something terrifying like a T-Rex for a little while, and Greater Invisibility is just a nasty spell all around. As if this guy wasn't already hard enough to find as it is, it being able to remain invisible while making attacks and casting spells is heinous. One thing about this spell kit that I actually love is the fact that it has Mage Hand. To most spellcasters, it's a truly handy spell to have, but to the Gray Shiver, it's essentially a magic carpet. I've done the math. And it absolutely works. The largest spider in the world doesn't even crack the half-a-pound mark at its peak potential weight. And a human skull weighs around 3 pounds on the high end, so even if the Lich's skull is from a tiefling or something with horns, unless it's a creature with a skull over 3 times heavier than a human, we're not gonna surpass that 10-pound mark. And Mage Hand allows you to carry around an object that weighs no more than 10 pounds. Mage Hand also has a potential movement speed of 30 feet, meaning that this spider can effectively use a cantrip to gain a 30-foot fly speed, with the caveat that it must use its action to control the hand in order to do so. This also means it can't dash to move 60 feet because it's not actually using its movement, it's using the magic action to move the Mage Hand around. But that is genuinely hilarious to me, and it also just makes sense that this is how the Shiver would navigate throughout its lair. Anyways, back to the stat block. This guy also has the ability to cast either shield or counterspell as a reaction, though unlike the true Lich stat block, it can't just do this willy-nilly. It does have a recharge to contend with, so hopefully it rolls lots of 5s and 6s. Now obviously you are free to adjust, tweak, change, and add anything to the spell list or remove anything from it that you don't like, because by the nature of spell lists, that's kind of what they're there for. If you really want your Gray Shiver to be able to cast Grease, slap it on there. But ultimately, that's pretty much how this creature is going to run in combat from the DM side. It plays out like a much harder to pin down Lich with a focus on dominating minions and obviously at a lower level. If your party's going up against one of these things, the biggest problem to overcome for them is going to be dealing with all of the Shiver's dominated creatures. Depending on who or what the spider has dominated, this could be a pretty harrowing encounter. And speaking of, let's talk about how we can actually design an encounter for this 8-legged freak. Where do I even begin with this thing? I mean, obviously it works just as an encounter in any crusty old dungeon. Got a place where a Lich was once felled? Well, here's a neat little monster to populate that place now. Or perhaps you have a high-level game going down, and the big bad is a true Lich bent on dominating the multiverse or something. In the final fight, maybe the Lich has a few Gray Shivers acting as minions, and they all live in the skulls of other Liches your big bad destroyed along their path to becoming the Lichiest Lich that ever liched. I'm not saying Vecna should have a terrarium full of Gray Shivers, but Vecna should totally have a terrarium full of Gray Shivers. This could also be a fun villain for a little epilogue campaign. Maybe you run a game where the final boss was indeed a Lich, and once that is all said and done, your next campaign takes place several years later, and now a lower level group of heroes has to rise to the occasion in order to take on a new threat stemming from the old Lich's lair. Little do they know, it's just a spider who decided to live in the wrong skull, but hey, sometimes it just do be like that. Something else worth mentioning about these guys is that the Lich skull itself is an object of note. While the spider is using it, it's treated like a piece of equipment being worn by the spider. But if the party ever manages to destroy the Lich skull without actually killing the spider, after an hour, the spider simply returns to being a normal spider. So if there's a druid in the group who wants to spare the little beast, there is a way to do so. But in the event that the Shiver is slain and the skull still remains, it should, of course, be destroyed. Though, what if one of the party members wants to keep it? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because in my stat block conversion for this monster, you will find a new rare magic item, which is simply called a Lich Skull. Basically, I just wrote up a little paragraph for how this thing works, but it's more or less an arcane focus that augments your necromancy spells, lets you cast Fear once per day, gives you necrotic resistance, and whispers sweet nothings about all the worlds there are to be conquered as you slumber. So yeah, pretty chill and cool stuff, especially for a party wizard, sorcerer, or warlock. But I mean, you should probably just destroy it. I also think there is room to make this guy a bit more menacing by doing one of two things. Either you could have the skull in question be the skull of a giant who became a Lich, maybe an eldritch or death giant, and the spider is a giant spider, thus making it much more dangerous in a physical sense. Or you could just run an adventure where the players have been shrunken down. It is legally still just a little spider, but the players are the size of flies, so in either case, it's giving Shelob, and we love that. I also think there's room to do something here with the drow. I mean, they love spiders, right? So perhaps you have a mighty drow archpriest or something who has a Gray Shiver as a familiar. I mean, you could do that with any powerful necromancer, but you know, come on. It's giving drow. The party isn't likely to anticipate a fireball spell from the drow lady's talking spider, and I guess that reminds me, did I mention that they can talk? Yeah, they know any of the languages that were known by the Lich while it was alive, so we can at least presume it knows Common and probably Draconic, but they likely know a few other languages, and that's just grand. The idea of a megalomaniacal invisible spider scooting around on a mage hand taunting the party while its horde of dominated minions seems to just swarm them until they are destroyed is just, well, it's something special. In any case, I love these guys, and I hope you do too. And if you want to use them, as always, link in the description down below is my 5th edition conversion of their stat block, which is free for you to use in the form of a Google document. And of course, if you want a slightly fancier PDF version of this monster stat block, check out my Patreon. It helps support me, keeps the channel running, and you get some cool stuff. Which reminds me, it's time for Patron of the Week. This week I want to give a big shout out to Nicholas Vieira. I am very grateful for all your support, my friend, and thank you for watching. As always, if there's a monster you would like to see show up on an episode of Monster of the Week, let me know in the comments down below or in the Dungeon Dad Discord or the Monster Suggestions channel, and you might just see it show up on the next episode of Monster of the Week. Who can say? I mean, probably not the next one because, you know, art and stuff takes time to make, but maybe the one after that. Who knows? And even if you don't have a suggestion for Monster of the Week, leave a comment anyway. Tell me about your favorite pair of pants that you own, because the algorithm loves that shit. But ultimately, that is all I got for you this week. So one more time, thank you for watching. Thank you to all these amazing folks over on the Patreon for supporting me, helping me do what I do here, and helping me pay these incredible artists to make all of the beautiful art for our little creature stat blocks. It means the most, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then.